The heat is the first thing you notice. It's a physical presence, a heavy, wet blanket pressing down on your skin, tasting of salt and rot, and sweet, cloying flowers you can't name. It shimmers above the bone-white sand, making the world wavy and uncertain, blurring the line between the turquoise water and the impossibly blue sky. The air is thick with the buzz of insects and the distant, rhythmic crash of waves against a treacherous reef. Closer, there's the squawk of a large, garishly colored parrot, the coarse laughter of men with sun-scorched faces, and the low, dangerous hum of a deal about to go very, very wrong. Hello there. Tonight, we're journeying to a place where fortunes are made and lives are lost over the glint of a stolen coin. The sweltering, lawless shores of Madagascar during the golden age of piracy. And at the heart of our story is a woman named Odette, a tavern wench with arrogance as sharp as a cutlass, whose argument with a merchant is about to set off a chain reaction of betrayal and desperation. Let's be honest. In a place like this, your chances of survival are questionable. You probably won't make it out of this tale unscathed, so before things get too comfortable, and before the blood starts to spill, feel free to press that like button and subscribe, but only if this is the kind of world you enjoy getting lost in. I'd love to see where you're listening from tonight, and what time it is in your corner of the world. Go ahead and let me know in the comments. Now, find a comfortable spot, dim the lights, and let the sounds of this forgotten shore carry you away. You are standing on that sun-baked sand now, a silent observer just feet away from the confrontation. The argument, which had been a low rumble, is now a spitting, snarling thing. The woman, Odette, stands with her back ramrod straight, her chin tilted up in a way that is both regal and infuriating. She's no pirate queen in fine silks. Her clothes are practical, a linen blouse stained with sweat at the collar and dark, sturdy trousers tucked into worn leather boots. But it's her posture, the defiant set of her jaw, and the cold, serious fire in her dark eyes that commands the space around her. She is arrogance personified, a fortress of self-assurance. Across from her, the merchant is her opposite in every way. He is a creature of bloat and excess, his face a roadmap of broken veins, his fancy coat stained and fraying at the cuffs. His name is Dubois, a name spat like a curse by half the denizens of this chaotic port. He jabs a sausage-like finger toward a small, velvet-wrapped bundle on the rickety table between them. 30 pieces, he hisses, his voice a gravelly whisper that still manages to cut through the noise of the market. Not a sou less. That was the price. That was the price before I saw the flaw, Odette counters, her voice calm and level, a stark contrast to his barely contained rage. She doesn't raise it, she doesn't need to. Her seriousness is its own kind of weapon. A crack in the silver. You didn't mention a crack, Dubois. She gestures to the bundle. You know what's inside without seeing it. A pair of ornate silver candlesticks, heavy and intricately carved, clearly plundered from a wealthy European estate or a grand ship's chapel. They are goods too fine for a tavern wench to be trading, which tells you everything you need to know about Odette's side hustles. The parrot, perched on the sagging canvas awning of Dubois' stall, lets out a shrill squawk. Flaw! Flaw! It shrieks, a cruel and perfect mimic of Odette's clipped tone. Dubois' face purples. It's stolen silver, you insolent girl. You expect a certificate of authenticity? The price is the price. You feel the tension quail in the humid air. This is more than a haggle. It's a clash of wills, a power play on a shore where power is the only currency that truly matters. Your eyes drift past them, out toward the bay. The heat haze warps the horizon, but you can clearly see a lone ship anchored just beyond the reef. It's a sleek vessel, faster than a merchantman, but smaller than a warship. Its sails are furled, but they are dyed a deep, unsettling black. Not the Jolly Roger of theatrical pirates, but the practical, ominous black of a ship that prefers to move like a phantom in the night. A musician's lute, soft and melancholic, drifts faintly from its deck. A strange, gentle sound in this place of harsh edges. It feels out of place, almost like a warning. Odette's gaze follows yours for a fraction of a second. A flicker of something, annoyance, concern, crosses her face before the mask of arrogant calm slams back into place. She knows that ship. 25, she says, her voice final, for damaged goods. Quote, You cheat! Dubois sputters, spittle flying from his lips. He leans forward, his bulk casting a greasy shadow over her. His hand drops to the hilt of a knife tucked into his sash. You think you can come to my stall, on my patch of sand, and dictate terms? I know people, wench. I know the captain of every vessel in this bay. One word from me, and you'll find every door in this den of thieves closed to you. You'll be begging for scraps before the tide turns. He leans in closer, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. Or perhaps you'll just be floating in it. Quote, "The threat hangs in the air, thick and oily. This is the moment it could all turn to violence." Odette doesn't flinch, but you see the subtle shift in her weight, a coiling of muscles in her shoulders. She is responsible for her own survival, and she is ready for this. But the violence, when it comes, isn't for her. A sudden roar erupts from 20 feet away. A drunken argument over a game of dice has escalated. You hear a table crash to the ground, the sound of splintering wood followed by a guttural scream, and the unmistakable, sickening shing of steel clearing a scabbard. A scuffle breaks out, a chaotic whirlwind of flailing limbs and shouted curses. Everyone's attention, including the merchant Dubois, snaps toward the commotion. It's a common enough sight here, but it's an effective distraction. And Odette, she is gone. In that single, shared moment of distraction, she seizes her opportunity. She doesn't run, she simply melts away. 1 second, she's a defiant statue of arrogance. The next, she's a shadow slipping between 2 ramshackle stalls. She moves with a fluid grace that belies her serious demeanor. A ghost leaving the scene of her own haunting. She leaves the silver behind. You don't hesitate. You follow. The heart-pounding thrill of escape mixes with the bitter taste of failure. Her failure. She lost the argument, lost the silver. She was threatened, and she retreated. You feel the sting of that reality as you plunge into the labyrinth of the pirate market behind her. The sounds of the scuffle, shouting, a cry of pain, fade behind you, replaced by the cacophony of the bazaar. You dodge a man with a scarred face selling suspicious-looking nautical charts. You sidestep a puddle of spilled rum that reeks like cheap perfume and regret. The air is a thick stew of smells. Charcoal fires, roasting fish, unwashed bodies, the cloying sweetness of sugarcane, and the faint coppery tang of recent bloodshed. Shady figures linger in every shadow, their eyes following you and Odette with predatory interest. But her pace is too quick, too confident. She navigates the throng as if she were born to it, her expression unreadable. You follow her as she turns down a narrow, winding passage between 2 leaning structures made of driftwood and sailcloth. The noise of the market dims, muffled by the close walls. The path is barely wide enough for 1 person, and the ground here is damp sand, littered with oyster shells and broken bottles. The air grows cooler, tasting more of salt and sea wrack than of rum and sweat. She is moving away from the chaotic heart of the settlement, heading back toward the water, but to a different part of the shore. The passage opens up, and you find yourself standing on a small, secluded stretch of beach. The sand here is darker, littered with volcanic rock. Ahead, the endless blue of the Indian Ocean stretches out, and to the left, standing solitary on a rocky promontory, is a tall, white stone lighthouse, its lamp dark against the bright afternoon sun. Odette stops, her shoulders slumping just for a moment, the first crack in her arrogant facade. She stares at the lighthouse, her jaw tight, taking a deep, shuddering breath before continuing her walk toward it. That single, shuddering breath is all the weakness she allows herself. The mask of cold competence slides back into place as she turns from the small beach, ignoring the direct, sandy approach to the lighthouse base. Instead, she heads for the tree line, a dark, tangled mass of jungle that encroaches upon the rocks. You follow, your feet sinking into the soft earth at the edge of the vegetation. The air changes instantly. The open, salty breeze is cut off, replaced by a humid, heavy stillness that smells of damp soil and decaying leaves. The path is barely a path at all, more a suggestion of passage worn through the undergrowth. Thick, waxy leaves brush against your arms, and the gnarled roots of unseen trees try to trip you at every step. The brilliant sunlight is filtered through the dense canopy above, dappling the ground in shifting patterns of green and gold. The sounds of the ocean become a distant, muffled roar, replaced by the close, intimate rustle of unseen things in the leaves, and the high-pitched drone of insects. Odette moves through it all with a grim determination, never looking back, her body a taut line of purpose. She knows this path. This is not her first retreat to this place. The climb grows steeper, the path weaving up the side of the promontory. Your calves burn with the effort. Finally, you break through the tree line and stand, breathing heavily, on a stone ledge behind the lighthouse. From here you can see the back of the chaotic settlement, a jumble of driftwood and stolen canvas that looks like a festering wound on the pristine shore. You can also see the bay, and the black-sailed ship still at anchor, a patient predator in the turquoise water. The lighthouse looms over you, a cylinder of whitewashed stone stained dark in patches by relentless sea spray and creeping moss. It doesn't look like a sanctuary. It looks like a prison, built to withstand a constant siege from the elements. A heavy, iron-strapped wooden door is set deep into the stone. Odette doesn't knock. She pounds the base of her fist against it, 3 sharp, rhythmic raps. Silence. Then, the grinding scrape of a small iron plate sliding aside. A pair of eyes appear in the slot, dark and suspicious, set in a face as weathered as the stone around it. "Go away," a voice grates from within, low and rough as stones tumbling in the surf. "Oran, it's me," Odette says. Her voice is flat, devoid of the arrogance she wore like armor in the market. Here, there is only a stark, weary urgency, the eyes in the slot narrow. There is a long pause, filled only by the cry of a gull and the distant wash of the sea. You can feel the man's reluctance, a heavy, unbreachable wall. "I told you last time, Odette. This is not a bolt hole for your messes." "This mess found me," she clips back, a flash of her usual fire returning. "I have nowhere else." Quote. "There is always somewhere else," the voice, Oran's voice, rumbles. "The sea is wide." "And full of men like Dubois," she counters, her voice dropping. "He threatened me, knife to his belt. It was close." Another silence stretches. You see Odette's jaw clench, her posture stiffening as if bracing for a final rejection. The moments tick by, each one a small lifetime. Then you hear the heavy thud of a bar being lifted from inside, followed by the groan of protesting hinges. The door swings inward into shadow. "Get in," Oren says, not as an invitation, but as a command. "And bring your trouble in with you. Don't leave it lingering on my doorstep." You slip inside behind Odette as he closes and bars the door, plunging the circular room at the base of the tower into cool twilight. The air inside is thick with the scent of lamp oil, brine, and cold stone. It's Spartan, obsessively tidy. A narrow, winding staircase of worn stone dominates the space, spiraling up into the darkness above. A simple cot is pressed against one wall, a small table with a single chair beside it. There are no comforts here, only function. Oran is a tall, gaunt man, older than Odette, with the same serious eyes but none of her defiant energy. His is a seriousness born of solitude, his face a landscape carved by wind and worry. He looks from Odette's face down to her empty hands. "The deal went sour then," he states. "It's not a question. He tried to cheat me," she says, moving past him to stare out a narrow slit of a window that faces the sea. "Claimed the price was firm, even with a flaw." "There is always a flaw," Oran says, his voice devoid of sympathy. He moves to a small stove, striking a flint to light a wick. "In the silver, in the deal, in the man." You should know this by now. He doesn't wait for a reply, simply beginning the methodical process of preparing a meager meal, his movements economical and precise. You watch as the day dies outside the narrow window. The brilliant blue sky fades to orange, then to a deep, bruised purple. A profound silence settles in the tower, broken only by the gentle hiss of the stove and the eternal murmur of the ocean. Then, with a soft whir of clockwork from high above, the light begins its watch. A great beam of white slices through the twilight, sweeping out across the water, disappearing, and then returning. Again and again. A steady, rhythmic pulse against the encroaching darkness. It illuminates the black-sailed ship for a moment, making it stand out starkly against the darkening water before plunging it back into shadow. Oran brings Odette a bowl of thin fish stew and a hunk of hard, dry bread. She takes it without a word, eating mechanically, her eyes still fixed on the window. You feel the tension humming between them, a shared history of disapproval and reluctant obligation. "I saw a ship like that once," Oran says suddenly, his back to her as he tends the lamp mechanism's lower gears. His voice is a low rumble that seems to be aimed more at the stone walls than at her. Off the coast of Sofala. Sailed under the flag of a Portuguese merchant, but that was a lie. Everything about her was a lie. Odette stops eating, her head tilted slightly. You sense this is his way of prying, an indirect approach. We were hauling cloves, Oran continues, his hands moving with practiced ease, wiping grease from a cog. My partner, a man named Finn, he set up the deal. Said it was safer than dealing with the company men in port. Quick, clean, a fat purse at the end of it. He pauses, his hands stilling for a moment. The ship had a musician, a man with a lute. Played these soft, sad little tunes while their captain talked prices with us. Made it all seem so civilized. He turns from the gears and looks toward the window, his gaze distant, seeing a memory you can't. The tune was a signal. The moment we agreed on a price, the music stopped. And they showed their teeth. Took the cloves, took our ship, took everything. Finn had planned it with them. His cut was my life. Quote. He looks at Odette then, his eyes holding hers in the dim, pulsing light of the tower. They left me on a sandbar the gulls used for a latrine. Figured the tide would do the job for them. They didn't count on me being a stronger swimmer than I look. The story hangs in the air between them, as real and as heavy as the stone walls. It's his past, but it feels like her present. A deal gone wrong. A partner's betrayal. The casual, brutal violence of this lawless world. You see the arrogant mask on Odette's face crumble, not into fear, but into a profound, weary understanding. She has just escaped a deal with a man who had a knife. She is hiding from a threat she doesn't fully understand, symbolized by a ship in the bay. A ship you recall hearing a lute from. What happened to Finn? She asks, her voice quiet. A grim, humorless smile touches Oren's lips for a fleeting second. The sea is a patient collector of debts. I saw him again, 2 years later, in a tavern in Nassau. He didn't see me. He turns back to his work, leaving the rest of the story to your imagination. A bond, thin and fragile as a spider's thread, forms in the silence. It is not a bond of affection, but of shared experience. The recognition of two people who live by their wits on the sharp, unforgiving edge of the world, who know the bitter taste of betrayal. Odette gets up and walks to the staircase. I'll take the first watch, she says, her voice regaining a sliver of its command. Oren nods, not looking at her. The lamp needs oil before the mid-watch bell. The can is up top. Don't let it burn dry. She ascends the spiraling stairs, her footsteps echoing in the narrow space. You follow her up, into the heart of the machine. The air grows warmer, heavy with the heat of the great lamp. At the top, a catwalk circles the powerful lens, which magnifies and directs the flame into its piercing beam. The entire world outside is a vast, terrifying blackness, bisected by the rhythmic sweep of light. Odette doesn't tend to the lamp. She stands at one of the thick glass panes, peering down into the bay. The lighthouse beam sweeps across the water, a searching finger of light. It passes over the sleek, dark vessel. For a heart-stopping moment, the light catches a lone figure standing on the ship's deck, a silhouette looking back towards the shore, towards the lighthouse, towards you. Then the beam moves on, and the ship and the figure are swallowed by the night once more. The fragile refuge of the tower suddenly feels like a cage, its bright, pulsing light, not a beacon of hope, but a marker, showing everyone in the darkness exactly where you are. The light sweeps past, and you both exhale a breath you didn't realize you were holding. Odette steps back from the glass, her silhouette rigid against the pulsating glow of the lamp. The arrogance she wore in the market is gone, burned away by the stark reality of being hunted. What remains is something harder, more brittle: responsibility. It's a weight you can feel settling on her shoulders as she finally turns to the lamp, her movements suddenly brusque and efficient. She finds the can of oil and begins the methodical, greasy work of tending the great light, her focus absolute. For her, survival has always been a task, a series of problems to be solved, and this is just the next step. Days bleed into nights, each one marked by the rhythmic sweep of the beam and the silent presence of the black ship in the bay. It never moves. It simply waits, a patient vulture. You spend those days in the claustrophobic confines of the tower, the tension between Odette and Oran, a third presence in the room. They speak in clipped, necessary phrases. The tide is high. More wood for the stove. Your turn for watch. The air is thick with unspoken history, with the ghost of Finn and the sour memory of deals gone wrong. On the third morning, Oran breaks the silence. He is cleaning a fish with ruthless precision, the knife flashing in the gray light filtering through the window slit. It is still there, he says, not looking up. Odette, staring out at the bay, doesn't need to ask what he means. I know. Dubois will have told them who you are, Oran continues, scraping scales onto an old piece of canvas. He will have described the wench who tried to cheat him, the one who fled toward my light. They are not waiting for you to come out, they are waiting for me. You see Odette's head turn sharply, her eyes narrowing. They wouldn't dare, you are the lighthouse keeper. Oran gives a short, bitter laugh. And what is that to them? A man in a stone tower. An obstacle. They want what you were selling. Or they want the person you stole it from. Or they simply want to make an example of the woman who saw their ship and knows their musician plays a warning. It does not matter. Your trouble is now lapping at my shore, Odette. He finally looks at her, his eyes as cold and gray as the sea in a storm. You must go. Quote, Go where? She challenges, a flicker of her old defiance returning. Swim back to France? This island is all I have. This island is a trap, and the door is closing, he says, his voice low and intense. You need a bigger maze, a place with more shadows to hide in, a place where a woman with a history can vanish. Quote, A long silence hangs between them, filled only by the distant scream of gulls. You see the calculation in Odette's eyes, the swift, cold logic that is her primary tool for survival. She is weighing options, measuring risks. The arrogance returns, but it is changed, transformed into a kind of grim self-assurance. She knows he is right. Nassau, she says, the word falling like a stone into the quiet room. Oran stops his work. He looks at her for a long moment, a flicker of something. Not admiration, but perhaps a grudging respect, in his gaze. To run from this den of thieves into the very heart of the snake pit, it is a move of profound, almost suicidal audacity. The Republic of Pirates, he murmurs. You would drown in that sewer. I am a strong swimmer, she replies, echoing his own words back at him. The decision is made. The journey is a thing of furtive whispers and dark water. Oran arranges it, calling in a debt with the captain of a grimy merchant cog hauling saltfish and cheap rum. You leave the lighthouse in the dead of night, slipping away while the black ship remains a dark slash against the horizon, its silent watch finally broken. The voyage is a long, miserable affair. The ship stinks of rot and bilge water, and the sea is a vast, indifferent wilderness. For weeks, the world is nothing but the groan of timbers, the snap of canvas, and the endless, heaving gray blue of the ocean. The sheer immensity of it is terrifying, a constant reminder of how small you are, how easily you could be swallowed and forgotten. But for Odette, it is also a cleansing. The farther the shores of Madagascar recede, the more the tension bleeds from her shoulders. Out here, she is anonymous, a ghost between ports. The freedom is intoxicating, laced with the constant, thrilling hum of fear. Your arrival in Nassau is a visceral assault. The harbor is a tangled forest of masts, a chaotic jumble of sloops, brigantines, and captured merchantmen flying flags of convenience or no flags at all. The air hits you first, a thick, wet wall of smells. It's the sweet, sickly stench of spilled rum and rotting sugarcane, the sharp tang of tar and salt, the stink of unwashed bodies, gunpowder, and waste, all baking under a merciless sun. The sound is a constant roaring cacophony, men shouting in a dozen different accents, the discordant strains of a fiddle clashing with a drunken sea shanty, the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer, and the ever-present squawk of parrots and monkeys kept as pets. You follow Odette as she steps onto the packed earth street, her worn boots sinking slightly into the filth. The port is a riot of color and motion. Men with sun-blackened skin and savage tattoos swagger past, their belts heavy with pistols and cutlasses. Women in gaudy, stolen silks laugh from the balconies of leaning brothels. Merchants hawk their wares from rickety stalls, their eyes constantly scanning the crowd for customers and thieves. It is a city built on plunder, running on greed, and fueled by rum. It is a place without law, only shifting allegiances and the simple, brutal truth of a sharp blade. Odette takes it all in, her serious expression a mask of stone. She doesn't flinch from the chaos. She absorbs it, her dark eyes cataloging every detail. This is not a place to be weak. She walks with purpose, her chin held high, her arrogance a shield against the predatory stares that follow her every move. She is just another piece of flotsam washed up on this notorious shore, and she knows the key is to find an anchor before the tide drags her under. She finds it in a tavern called the Drowned Man. It's not the most notorious dive in Nassau, nor the most respectable, which makes it the perfect place to disappear. The air inside is thick with pipe smoke, the light a hazy gloom filtering through grimy windows. The floor is covered in sawdust-stained dark with spilled grog, and who knows what else. Every table is a universe of its own. A crew of sailors gambling with worn, greasy cards. A pair of quartermasters arguing quietly over a ship's ledger. A lone pirate staring into his cup, his face a mask of violent regret. Odette strides directly to the bar, where a mountain of a man with a scarred face and a single, milky white eye is wiping down a pewter tankard. "You need a wench," she says. It's not a question. The man, the proprietor, looks her up and down, his one good eye lingering on her for a moment. He's seen 100 women like her, washed up, desperate. "Got 2 already, don't need a third." Quote, "Your other 2 are flirting for tips and letting the customers get away with shortchanging you," Odette states, her voice flat and even. "One of them just let that crew in the corner have a round on a tab you'll never collect. I'll work for my keep and a share. I will make sure you get paid for every drop you pour, and I won't cause you any trouble." Her seriousness is disarming. In a world of bluster and false bravado, her stark, arrogant competence is an unusual commodity. The one-eyed man grunts. Considering her, he sees no desperation in her eyes, only resolve. "The last girl who said that tried to slit my throat for the lockbox key," he rumbles. "I have no interest in your lockbox," Odette says coolly. "Only in being left alone to do my work." Quote, he stares at her for another long beat, then nods once, a short, sharp jerk of his head. "Fine, there's an apron by the barrels. Don't get in my way." And just like that, you are in. You become a shadow at her side, as she blends into the fabric of the Drowned Man. She is quick, efficient, and silent. She learns to navigate the treacherous currents of the tavern, to pour a drink with one hand while keeping the other near the small knife she now keeps tucked in her belt. You watch as she learns the faces, the names, the allegiances. She learns that the boisterous Captain Vane and his crew are to be given a wide berth, their violence as unpredictable as a summer squall. She learns that the flamboyant calico Jack Rackham is more style than substance, but the 2 women who sail with him are as dangerous as any man in the room. She learns the intricate dance between the pirates who bring in the plunder, the merchants who fence the goods at a fraction of their worth, and the corrupt officials from the governor's office who come in for their weekly bribes, their faces sweating in the tropical heat. Odette becomes a repository of secrets, a silent witness to 100 whispered conspiracies and drunken confessions. She serves them all, her face an unreadable mask, her arrogance a silent declaration that she is a part of this world but not a victim of it. She is surviving. She is learning. But sometimes, in a quiet moment when a stray fiddle tune drifts through the open door, you see her hand still for a fraction of a second, her gaze turning distant. The shores of Madagascar may be 1,000 miles away, but the ghost of a black ship and the soft, melancholic notes of a lute are a debt that the sea has not yet collected. One evening, weeks after your arrival, the one-eyed proprietor of the Drowned Man sends Odette on an errand. A rival tavern, the Serpent's Coil, has acquired a cask of Portuguese brandy he's been after, and he wants Odette, with her unreadable face and sharp mind, to negotiate the purchase of a few bottles. Not to trade, but to buy. A test of her loyalty and a use for her dispassionate-seeming nature. You walk with her through the deepening twilight of Nassau. The chaotic noise of the day softens into something more sinister, a landscape of predatory whispers and sudden, sharp laughter from darkened doorways. The Serpent's Coil is a deeper circle of hell than the Drowned Man. The smoke is thicker, the laughter more desperate, the threat of violence a constant, tangible hum beneath the floorboards. As Odette waits by the bar, her face a familiar mask of bored indifference, a sound cuts through the din. It is soft, intricate, and utterly out of place. It's the sound of a lute, played not with the clumsy, drunken fervor of a sailor trying to impress a wench, but with a skill that is both heartbreaking and sublime. You see her body go rigid, Her hand, resting on the grimy bar top, clenches into a fist. It's the same music. The same sad, gentle melody that drifted across the water from the black-sailed ship in Madagascar. Her eyes scan the room, sweeping past the leering faces and drunken gamblers, finally landing on the musician. He's tucked into a shadowed corner, sitting on an upturned barrel, almost trying to make himself invisible. He is young, perhaps no older than Odette herself, with a lean frame and dark hair that falls across his brow. His clothes are clean but worn thin, and he hunches over his instrument as if it were a shield. He isn't playing for the crowd. He's playing for himself, his eyes closed, lost in the melancholy notes. He is the very picture of shy vulnerability, and in the City of Sharks, that makes him look like a lamb waiting for slaughter. This is William Turner. Odette's stare is hard, analytical. This is the man whose music signaled a threat, whose presence on that ship was tied to the moment her life in Madagascar unraveled. Yet, looking at him now, he doesn't seem like a predator. Before she can act, a trio of burly pirates, drunk on cheap grog and their own importance, lurch toward him. "Oi! Musician!" one of them bellows, his voice slurring. "Play us something with a bit of life in it. A shanty, not a bloody dirge." Quote. William flinches, his eyes snapping open. They are wide and startled, the eyes of a cornered animal. He stops playing, the beautiful melody dying with the discordant thrum as his fingers tremble on the strings. I stanno many, he stammers, his voice so soft it's almost swallowed by the tavern's roar. "Then what good are you?" the pirate sneers, grabbing the neck of the lute. "Maybe we should find a better use for this firewood." Quote, "This is the moment. You expect Odette to turn away, to complete her errand, and leave the boy to his fate. It is not her trouble." But she doesn't. You see that familiar, cold calculation in her eyes. This is not charity. It is an opportunity. She pushes off the bar and walks toward the confrontation, her steps deliberate and soundless. "He's with me," she says, her voice low and sharp as splintered ice. It cuts through the drunken haze with an authority that makes all three pirates turn. They see a tavern wench, yes, but they also see the absolute lack of fear in her eyes, the dangerous seriousness in her posture. They see a woman who looks like she has nothing to lose, which in Nassau is the most terrifying thing of all. "He is?" The leader scoffs, though his grip on the lute loosens slightly. Odette stops beside William's barrel, placing herself between him and the men. "His music offends your delicate ears?" "A shame. I was just about to pay him for a private song." She lets her gaze drift pointedly to the cutlass at the pirate's hip. "But I'm sure you have more important business than harassing artists. Unless you're so poor, you need to steal his pennies." It's a calculated insult, striking at their pride. The pirate's face darkens, but he sees his friends shifting uncomfortably. A brawl over a musician was one thing. Being called poor by a sharp-tongued wench was another. With a final contemptuous grunt, he shoves the lute back at William and turns away. "Plenty of other music in this cesspit," he mutters, and the trio shambles off in search of easier prey. Odette doesn't watch them go. Her attention is fixed on William. He is staring up at her, his expression a mixture of terror and bewildered gratitude. "Thank you," he whispers, clutching his instrument to his chest. "I didn't do it for you," she says, her voice flat. "Stand up! We're leaving!" He scrambles to his feet, slinging the lute over his back. You follow them as Odette leads him out of the serpent's coil, not back toward the drowned man, but down a narrow, refuse-choked alley that smells of brine and despair. She pushes him against a damp brick wall, the sound of the tavern fading behind them. "The ship with the black sails," she says, no preamble, no softness. "Madagascar, you were the musician." William's face goes pale in the moonlight, all the blood drains from it, leaving it looking like a skull. He starts to shake his head, a pathetic, desperate denial. I don't know what you're talking about." Quote, "Don't lie to me," she hisses, her arrogance now a weapon she presses against his throat like a blade. "I heard your song then, I heard it tonight. Now you will tell me why a man who plays such sad music works for men who leave people to die on sandbars." Quote, the mention of the sandbar shatters his composure, his eyes well with tears. "You know about that?" "You know, Oran." The name is a broken whisper. The world seems to tilt. She was expecting a confession of villainy, not a plea of shared acquaintance. Her expression flickers with surprise before hardening once more. "He is my kin." The men your captain left for the tide. Now talk." And the story spills out of him, a torrent of fear and misery. He wasn't part of the crew, he was cargo. A musician from a captured merchant vessel, his talent for the lute was deemed more valuable than a ransom. The captain of the ship, a ruthless man known only as the Phantom, kept him as a pet, a strange status symbol. His music was used to lend an air of civility to the Phantom's brutal negotiations, to lull targets into a false sense of security. The sad tune was not a signal. It was all he felt he could play, a constant lament for his own captivity. And then he tells you the secret that links everything together. "Dubois," he chokes out. "The merchant. He wasn't just their fence. He was my keeper." It turns out Dubois had family back in Bristol, a sister William had been courting. The merchant used this, holding the threat of harm to her over William's head to ensure his compliance and silence. Dubois was his jailer as much as the Phantom was. To prove it, he fumbles inside his worn coat. His hand emerges, and in his palm, catching the dim light, is a silver candlestick. It's ornate, intricately carved, and you see it instantly, the small, dark crack near the base. It is the twin to the one Odette left on Dubois' table. The Phantom gave it to him as payment for his services, William whispers, his voice thick with self-loathing. "Dubois gave it to me, a gift. A reminder of what I was a part of. I couldn't get rid of it." Quote, "You watch Odette stare at the candlestick, at the flawed piece of silver that started it all. Everything clicks into place. The ship, the musician, the threat. It wasn't just a deal gone wrong. It was a glimpse into the workings of a much larger, more dangerous machine. And she had thrown a wrench in it. William isn't her antagonist. He's another victim, caught in the same web. A different strand, but the same spider." Her demeanor changes. The aggressive posture softens, not into kindness, but into cold, hard strategy. She sees him now not as a threat, but as a resource. An exquisitely valuable one. He is weak, shy, and terrified. But he knows her enemies from the inside. "The Phantom," she says, the name a cold stone in her mouth. "Is he in Nassau?" Quote. William shakes his head frantically. "No, not yet, but he will be." He and Dubois, they were planning to take over the trade here, to push out the small-time fences. Dubois was supposed to be his man on the inside. With him gone, he trails off, the implication hanging in the foul air. The Phantom will come looking for answers, and for his candlestick. A fragile alliance is forged in that filthy alley, not with a handshake, but with a silent acknowledgement of mutual desperation. You are two survivors, adrift in the same storm, clinging to the same piece of wreckage. He needs protection from the ghost of Dubois and the coming storm of the Phantom. You need his knowledge. You need a way to turn from the hunted into the hunter. "You will not play that song again," Odette commands, her voice leaving no room for argument. "You will find a room near the drowned man. You will tell me everything you know about this Phantom, his habits, his crew, his weaknesses." "And you?" William asks, his voice barely a whisper. "You'll protect me?" Quote. Odette looks at him, this shy musician who is her opposite in every way. In his fear, she sees a reflection of the vulnerability she works so hard to hide. In his secret, she sees a key. Survival in Nassau is about alliances. Revenge is about opportunity. William, by a twist of fate, is both. "No," she says, her voice as serious as a death sentence. "I won't protect you." She picks the silver candlestick from his trembling hand, its weight familiar and cold. "We will protect each other." Quote. Her words, "we will protect each other," hang in the foul alley air, a vow sealed not in faith but in shared damnation. You watch as she tucks the flawed silver candlestick into her belt, an anchor of cold purpose. The terror has not left William's face, but something new has joined it. A fragile sliver of hope, more dangerous than any fear. "Nassau is a fishbowl," Odette says, her voice a low murmur, already turning the problem over in her mind like a puzzle box. Every whisper here becomes a shout by morning. When the Phantom comes looking for his candlestick and his musician, this entire island will sell you for a bottle of rum. She looks at William, her gaze sharp and analytical. This network of his. Dubois was his agent in Madagascar. You were his pet. Who else? Where else? Quote. William flinches at the word pet, but answers quickly, his voice still shaky. "Tortuga." He uses a man there, a Frenchman named Jean-Luc, a moneylender with fingers in everything from smuggling to slave trading. The Phantom's gold passes through his hands. It's a dirtier place than here, they say. Wilder. Good, Odette says, a grim satisfaction in the single word. A bigger maze has more shadows. She turns and starts walking out of the alley, leaving William no choice but to scramble after her. We leave on the next tide. Find a captain who values coin over questions. Getting passage is a perilous dance. You follow them through the nocturnal labyrinth of Nassau's back streets, a ghost at their heels. They pool their scant resources, the coins Odette had earned at the drowned man, a few shillings William had hidden in the lining of his coat. They find their ship not at the main docks, but in a stinking inlet where things that wish to remain unseen come and go. It's a small, battered sloop called the Sea Serpent, captained by a weasel-faced man with shifting eyes who agrees to take them to Tortuga for a price that leaves them with nothing but the clothes on their backs. The journey is a descent into a new kind of hell. The Sea Serpent is a cramped, heaving, living thing that stinks of unmucked animal pens from a previous cargo and the pervasive despair of its crew. You are crammed below deck in a space not meant for passengers, the constant groaning of the ship's timbers a sound that gets into your bones. The sea, a beautiful turquoise from the shores of Madagascar, is now a monstrous, churning slate-gray beast that wants to swallow you whole. William is violently ill, his shy nature overwhelmed by the misery of it, leaving him pale and trembling in a corner. Odette, however, seems almost at home. She moves with the ship's rhythm, her face a mask of grim endurance. You see her watching the crew, her eyes missing nothing, the fraying rope, the nervous glances at the darkening sky. She is not a sailor, but she is a student of survival, and the ship is her new textbook. One afternoon, she takes the bowl of brackish water and hardtack she's procured and shoves it wordlessly at William. He shakes his head, his face green. "Take it," she commands, her voice leaving no room for refusal. A useless man is dead weight, and I do not carry dead weight. Her arrogance is a spur, a cruel kindness meant to shock him back to life. He takes the offered food, his hand shaking, and forces himself to eat. Days later, the storm hits. It comes without warning, a black wall on the horizon that devours the sky in minutes. The world becomes a roaring chaos of wind and water. The sloop is tossed about like a child's toy, waves crashing over the deck, the rain a horizontal fusillade. Down below, you are thrown against the damp wood, the screams of the wind barely distinguishable from the screams of the terrified crew above. In the chaos, a stack of poorly secured barrels breaks loose, rolling across the hold, threatening to crush William, who is frozen with terror. Without hesitation, Odette moves. She grabs a loose coil of rope, her movements swift and certain in the pitching darkness. She doesn't shout for him to move. She shoves him out of the way, her strength surprising you both. Then, with a focus that is absolute, she begins to lash the barrels down, her knuckles raw and bleeding, fighting the violent lurch of the ship with every knot she ties. William, seeing her struggle, seems to find a spark of resolve in the depths of his fear. He stumbles to her side, adding his weight to hold a barrel steady while she works the ropes. For a long, terrifying hour, they work together in the roaring dark, a silent, desperate team bound by the single goal of not being crushed or drowned. When the storm finally breaks, leaving the Sea Serpent battered but intact, a new quiet settles between them. It's not friendship, but a hard-won, unspoken respect. He has seen her strength, and she has seen that he is more than just a fragile artist. Tortuga, when you finally see it, makes Nassau look like a civilized metropolis. It is not a town so much as a festering wound carved into the jungle. Ramshackle huts and taverns cling to a muddy hillside that slides down to a bay filled with ships flying the skull and crossbones with brazen pride. The air is thick with the smells of mud, cheap wine, and blood. The sound is different here, too. The boisterous energy of Nassau is replaced by a low, menacing hum of paranoia. The pirates here are not the swaggering dandies of Rackham's ilk. They are gaunt, scarred buccaneers, their eyes holding a feral glint, their loyalties bought and sold by the hour. "Stay close," Odette murmurs, the command meant as much for herself as for William. Her arrogance is her shield, but even you can feel the oppressive danger of this place pressing in, seeking a crack in her armor. They find a room for rent, above a cantina so foul, it seems even the rats have abandoned it. It is little more than a closet, with a single grimy window overlooking a river of mud and refuse that serves as a street. It is from this vantage point that William, his face pale and drawn, spends hours scanning the crowds below. On the second day, he sees him. "There," he whispers, his voice tight. You follow his gaze. A man is striding through the mud, heedless of the filth that splatters his fine leather boots. He is dressed in dark, severe clothes that are out of place amongst the gaudy rags of the pirates. He has a ledger tucked under one arm and is flanked by two guards whose hands never stray far from the pistols in their belts. He has the predatory stillness of a spider, sitting at the center of a vast, invisible web. "Jean-Luc," Odette breathes, her eyes narrowing. He is their link. He is their target. But you can see by the way he moves, the way the crowd parts before him, that a direct confrontation is suicide. "We cannot fight him," she says, her mind already working, "so we must rob him." The plan she devises is audacious, relying on the very traits that make them such an odd pair. William, the shy musician, is to be the bait. You watch him that evening as he takes his lute to the cantina below. He finds a dark corner and begins to play. He does not play the Phantom's sad lament, but a series of soft, intricate Spanish folk tunes, music that is complex, beautiful, and utterly ignored by the drunken brutes in the room. He makes himself invisible, a piece of living scenery. Odette, meanwhile, is across the muddy street, a shadow in a darkened doorway, watching the entrance to Jean-Luc's office above a neighboring shop. She has spent her last few coins not on food, but on a bottle of potent, drugged wine from a back-alley herbalist. The plan is simple. William will observe Jean-Luc's routine, and when the moment is right, Odette will intercept one of his clerks or messengers, ply him with the wine, and steal his keys. But Tortuga is a place that feeds on simple plans and spits them out as tragedy. As William plays, you see Jean-Luc himself emerge from his office, not with a clerk, but with two of his hulking guards. They don't head for the cantina. Instead, they turn down a narrow, torch-lit passage. William, seeing this, makes a split-second decision. He slings his lute over his shoulder and follows, melting into the shadows a safe distance behind them. You abandon Odette's post and trail William. The passage opens into a small, enclosed courtyard behind a warehouse. A deal is happening. Jean-Luc is meeting with a pirate captain, a mountain of a man with a scarred face and a hook for a hand. You see chests being opened, the glint of gold and jewels in the torchlight. This is the Phantom's network in action. And then, everything goes wrong. A dog, tied up nearby, begins to bark furiously at William's hiding spot. Every head in the courtyard snaps in his direction. "Who's there?" One of Jean-Luc's guards barks, drawing a pistol. Before they can drag him into the light, a commotion erupts from the mouth of the passage. It's Odette. She stumbles into the courtyard, feigning drunkenness, a bottle dangling from her hand. She looks wild, disheveled, and completely unimportant. "Well, look at this," she slurs, grinning foolishly at the assembled men. "A private party! And you didn't invite me?" quote. The pirate captain with the hook laughs, a harsh, grating sound. "Look what the tide washed in. Get lost, wench, before you get hurt." Jean-Luc, however, is not amused. His eyes, cold and dark, fix on Odette. He recognizes the type. The desperate. The dangerous. "Search her," he commands his guards. But as the guards move toward her, another figure stumbles out of the passage behind her. An old, grizzled pirate she must have paid or promised something to, who now lurches forward, shouting accusations that she stole his bottle. It's the perfect distraction, a common, sordid squabble. As the guards are momentarily occupied by the manufactured chaos, Odette's eyes lock with William's across the courtyard. It's a silent, urgent command. Now. William acts. He is no fighter, no hero. But he is a musician. He raises his lute not as a weapon, but as an instrument of chaos. He strikes the strings with a loud, crashing, discordant chord, a sound so jarring and ugly it makes every man in the yard flinch. In that single, shared moment of shock, Odette moves. She is not aiming for the men. She kicks the leg of the rickety table laden with Jean-Luc's ledger and bags of coin. The table collapses. Gold scatters across the muddy ground. The ledger falls open into a puddle. It's a disaster. The pirate captain roars in anger, his crew scrambling for the coins. Jean-Luc's guards are torn between subduing the drunks and securing their master's money. In this maelstrom of greed and confusion, no one is looking at the real prize. Odette dives, not for the gold, but for the soiled ledger. She snatches it from the mud, tucks it under her arm, and sprints for the opposite side of the courtyard, disappearing into another dark alleyway. William, his job done, has already vanished back the way he came. The treachery of Tortuga was not that they were caught in a trap, but that they had to become the architects of their own chaos to survive it. You find them an hour later, back in their filthy room, the barred door bolted shut. Odette lays the damp, mud-stained ledger on the floor. William is trembling, the adrenaline leaving him weak, but his eyes are bright with a kind of terrified pride. Odette ignores him, her focus entirely on the prize. With nimble fingers, she carefully separates the clinging pages. Much of the ink has run, but some entries, figures, and names are still legible. And then you see it. On the last page, a notation, separate from the others, a ship's name, the Chimera, and a date just 2 weeks away. Beside it, a single, elegantly written name that makes the air in the room grow cold. Turner. William stares at the page, his own surname looking back at him like a ghost. He knows, he whispers in horror. The phantom he knows about my family. He was tracking them. Quote, Odette looks from the book to William's terrified face. The shy musician, her antagonist, her asset, her partner. She sees it all now. This was never just about a stolen candlestick or a soured deal. It was about leverage. The Phantom didn't just own William, he owned his future, his family, his entire world. And in that ledger, you have just stolen the Phantom's leverage. You have stolen his map. She closes the book. He is coming, she says, her voice devoid of fear, replaced now by a cold, sharp-edged certainty. Let him come. The words are a vow, a declaration of war whispered in a filthy, cramped room. Let him come. But you don't have to wait. He is already here. The fragile wood of the door explodes inward, splintering into the room in a shower of rotten timber. Framed in the doorway are Jean-Luc's 2 guards, their faces grim, their pistols already drawn. Behind them, in the flickering torchlight of the hall, stands Jean-Luc himself. His severe expression hardened from anger into cold, reptilian certainty. His eyes lock onto the mud-stained ledger in Odette's hands. There is no time for thought. Only instinct. Odette moves, a blur of motion. She snatches up the rickety stool she was sitting on and hurls it at the doorway. It's not a weapon. It's a moment's obstruction. As the guards flinch back, she grabs William's arm, her grip like iron. The window, she snarls. She shoves him toward the grimy pane of glass as she draws the small, vicious knife from her belt. The guards recover instantly, charging into the room. One of them lunges for Odette. She doesn't meet his charge head-on. She sidesteps, a dancer in a brawl, and brings her knife up in a brutal, efficient arc, slicing his arm from wrist to elbow. He screams, dropping his pistol, his other hand clutching the gushing wound. William, meanwhile, kicks out the window frame, the rotten wood giving way easily. He scrambles through the opening, his lute still strapped to his back, and drops onto the leaning roof of the cantina below. The drop is short, but the landing is slick with rain and grime. Odette is right behind him. The second guard grabs at her ankle as she climbs through, but she twists and kicks back with her free foot, her boot connecting solidly with his jaw. You hear a sickening crunch. She doesn't look back to see him fall. She lands beside William on the slick rooftop, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Below, the muddy river of a street is alive with the sounds of shouting as Jean-Luc barks orders. They have seconds. This way! She pants, and you are running, slipping and sliding on the treacherous shingles, leaping across a narrow gap to the next roof. Tortuga unfolds below you, a maze of torchlit alleys and dark, menacing courtyards. It is a city designed for ambush and escape. Your feet pound on the weathered wood, the sound lost in the general din of the pirate den. A pistol shot rings out, the ball whining past your head and burying itself in a chimney stack. They are on the rooftops with you. You follow them as they scramble down a rusted drainpipe into a narrow alley piled high with discarded barrels and fishing nets. It's a dead end. You hear the scrape of boots on the shingles above. They are trapped. William's face is a mask of pure terror, his eyes wide in the gloom. Odette, however, looks feral. Her arrogance has been stripped away, leaving only the sharp-edged core of a survivor. She presses herself and William into the deep shadow cast by a stack of huge wine casks. "Don't make a sound," she breathes, her chest heaving. One of the guards drops into the alley 20 feet away, his pistol held ready. He begins to advance slowly, his eyes scanning the shadows. You can smell the coppery tang of Odette's blood from the shallow cut the first guard gave her arm. It's a small price, but a price has been paid. The guard creeps closer. He's almost upon you. You see William's hand tighten on the neck of his lute. He's preparing to swing it, to sacrifice his last connection to his old life. But Odette puts a hand on his arm, a silent command to wait. She is watching the guard's feet, watching the way he navigates the treacherous, mud-slicked ground. Just as he draws level with your hiding spot, Odette kicks out a loose cobblestone from the base of the wall. It slides into the guard's path, his foot catches, and for a fraction of a second his balance is gone. It's all the time she needs. She explodes from the shadows, low and fast, like a panther. Her knife flashes once, twice. It is not a duel, it is an execution. She drives the blade into the soft spot under his ribs, then rips it free. The guard makes a choked, gurgling sound and collapses into the mud, his pistol clattering on the stones. Before the sound of his fall has fully registered, Jean-Luc and the remaining guard, the one with the sliced arm, drop into the alley's entrance, blocking your only escape. Jean-Luc holds a slender, deadly-looking rapier, its point catching the torchlight. He is no mere bookkeeper. "Impressive for a tavern wench," he says, his voice devoid of all emotion. "Give me my ledger, and I will make your death quick." This is it, the final confrontation. Odette shoves the ledger into William's arms. "Guard it," she orders. The guard with the wounded arm comes at her, his face contorted in a mask of pain and rage, swinging a heavy club. Odette meets his wild swings with calculated dodges, her smaller knife a flickering threat. She is faster, but he is stronger, and she is tiring. You watch as William, clutching the book, backs away, his eyes darting around the alley. He sees it. A heavy fishing net tangled with iron weights, draped over a barrel. Jean-Luc is advancing on Odette, his rapier testing her defenses, forcing her back toward the club-wielding guard. They mean to corner her. William moves. With a desperate cry of effort, he heaves the heavy net off the barrel and flings it with all his might. It's a clumsy, desperate act, but it works. The net unfurls in the air, its weighted edges catching the wounded guard, tangling his arms and legs, and bringing him crashing down. But the move has left William exposed. Jean-Luc, with a contemptuous sneer, changes targets. He dismisses Odette and lunges toward the true prize, the musician holding his secrets. His rapier flashes toward William's chest. Odette screams, a sound of pure fury. "No!" She throws herself in front of William, a human shield. The rapier's point rips through her blouse and bites deep into her shoulder. Pain, sharp and blinding, explodes across her vision. She stumbles back, her arm going numb, her knife falling from her nerveless fingers. Jean-Luc smiles, a thin, cruel slash of a mouth. He raises his rapier for the killing blow, savoring his victory. "I told you it would be quick." And that is his mistake. He is looking at Odette, the defeated brawler. He is not looking at William. The shy musician is gone. In his place is a man who has seen his only protector fall. With a roar of rage that seems torn from the very depths of his soul, William swings his lute. Not as a shield, not as a threat, but as a weapon. The beautiful, polished wood, the instrument of his art and his sorrow, connects with the side of Jean-Luc's head with a sickening crack of splintering wood and bone. Jean-Luc staggers, his eyes wide with disbelief, a trickle of blood running from his temple. The rapier wavers. That is the only opening you will get. Odette, ignoring the fire in her shoulder, dives for her fallen knife. She comes up under Jean-Luc's guard, her body flush against his. Her good arm wraps around his back, holding him tight. Her other hand, the one with the knife, finds its home. She drives the blade into his belly, once, then again, with a guttural sob of effort and pain. The fight is over. He slumps to the ground, his eyes still holding a look of profound surprise. The alley falls silent, the only sounds the distant shouts from the cantina and the harsh, ragged breathing of two survivors. The price has been paid in full. The aftermath is a tableau of blood and mud. William stands over the body, the shattered remains of his lute hanging from his hand by a single string. His face is slack with horror. He looks down at his hands, no longer just the hands of a musician, but the hands of a killer. He retches, turning away to vomit into the filth of the alley. Odette leans against the cold, damp wall, pressing a torn piece of her blouse against the bleeding wound in her shoulder. The pain is a sharp, insistent reality. But beneath the pain, there is something else. A cold, terrifying calm. She looks at the bodies, at the mud, at the trembling musician who saved her life, and she feels the world shift on its axis. She has always been responsible for her own survival. Now she is responsible for his. And she has taken a life not just to escape, but to control their fate. "William," she says, her voice a raw rasp. He doesn't look up. "William, look at me." He finally turns, his face pale and tear-streaked. "We are not done," she says, her voice hard as stone. "We do not die here." Her words are a lifeline. They pull him back from the edge of his horror. They leave the bodies where they lie. Tortuga is a city that buries its own dead, or leaves them for the pigs. Odette retrieves the ledger, its pages now stained with something more than mud. They limp out of the alley, a wounded woman and a broken musician, and melt back into the city's shadows. You find yourselves in the docks an hour later, the moon casting a silver path across the dark water. They don't have a single coin left between them. Odette walks directly to the gangplank of a small, fast-looking brigantine preparing to cast off. A rough-looking first mate blocks her path. "No passengers," he grunts. Odette doesn't plead. She opens the ledger. Her finger, stained with her own drying blood, taps a name on the page. "Captain Morales," she says, her voice low but carrying absolute authority. "According to this, you owe the Phantom a significant debt. A debt I have just acquired." She looks him in the eye. "We need passage to Port Royal." "And your silence. Consider it your first payment." The mate's jaw drops. He looks from the ledger to Odette's cold, serious eyes, and then to the haunted-looking musician beside her. He sees the blood on her clothes and understands he is looking at people who have just created a power vacuum. He nods slowly. "Get aboard," he says, stepping aside. You stand with them at the ship's rail as Tortuga recedes into the darkness. The island of thieves and murderers shrinks until it is just another shadow on the horizon. William stares down at his hands, then lets the last broken piece of his lute slip from his fingers and fall into the ship's wake. It is a burial. Odette watches it go, then turns her gaze forward, to the open sea. She opens the ledger. The wind whips at the pages, but she holds them firm. This book is no longer just a list of names and debts. It is a weapon. It is a map. It is the price of their freedom, bought with blood and splintered wood. And you both know, as the ship cuts through the black water toward a new dawn, that the cost will only get higher. They are no longer running from a ghost. They are going to hunt him. The deck of the Sea Serpent pitches beneath your feet, a constant, unsteady rhythm that matches the frantic beating of your own heart. Tortuga is a smear of guttering torchlight behind you, but you know you are not safe. Freedom is not a line you cross, but a state you must fight to maintain. The first mate, Morales, stands at the helm, his knuckles white, his weasel face tight with a fear that has nothing to do with the sea. The crew, a collection of gaunt-faced men with dead eyes, watch you and Odette. They do not see saviors. They see the architects of their captain's new terrifying debt. They see trouble that will inevitably splash onto them. "They'll have a sloop in the water by dawn," Morales mutters, his voice a low grade of gravel. He doesn't look at Odette, but the words are for her. "Faster than this old tub. They'll run us down before we clear the strait." Odette stands beside him, one hand clutching her bleeding shoulder, the other steadying herself on the rail. The pain is a hot, liquid fire, but her eyes are cold as ice. She is studying the set of the sails, the nervous energy of the crew, the dark, churning water ahead. "Then we don't clear the strait," she says. Her voice is strained, but the command in it is absolute. There is another way, a channel through the serpent's teeth. Morales scoffs, a sound of pure disbelief. "That's suicide. The rocks are unmarked, the current's a devil's whirlpool. It'd tear the hull out from under us." Quote, The ledger says you've made the passage before, Odette counters, her voice dropping. On a moonless night, hauling French silks for the Phantom. He values men who take risks, doesn't he? Quote, the captain's face pales. The information is too specific, too damning. The crewmen within earshot shift uneasily. The ledger isn't just a book of debts. It's a book of secrets, and she wields it like a headsman's axe. William, standing beside her, clutches the book to his chest. It is their only shield. The chase comes with the first gray hint of dawn. A black dot on the horizon rapidly resolves into a low, swift sloop, its sails catching the morning wind. It is built for speed, for pursuit. Panic ripples through the sea serpent's crew. You feel it in the air, a metallic taste of fear. Morales hesitates, his eyes flicking from the approaching predator to the jagged line of rocks that marks the entrance to the serpent's teeth. Make the turn, Odette commands, her gaze locked on the pursuing ship. They won't follow. They're hunters, not gamblers. With a curse that is half prayer, half blasphemy, Morales spins the wheel. The brigantine groans in protest as it changes course, heading directly for the seemingly impassable barrier of rock. You enter the channel, and the world changes. The open sea is replaced by towering, black stone fangs that rise from the churning water. The wind becomes unpredictable, swirling between the rocks. The sound of the waves is a constant, deafening roar as they smash against the stone. This is a test of pure nerve and skill. Morales is a good sailor, his hands and eyes working in a frantic, desperate harmony with the ship. But it's not enough. A sudden cross-current catches the bow, threatening to swing you into a submerged rock. To starboard! William shouts, his voice raw but clear. He is pointing, not at the water, but high up on the cliff face. The gulls! They're nesting on that ledge! The wind is shallower there! Quote. It's an artist's observation, a detail a sailor would miss. He sees the world in textures and patterns, in the flight of a bird and the color of the water. Morales, with no other options, follows the strange advice, spinning the wheel hard. The ship scrapes past the rock with a scream of tortured timber that you feel in your teeth, but the hull holds. You are through the worst of it. When you emerge into the calmer waters on the other side, you look back. The sloop has stopped at the entrance to the channel, a frustrated predator unwilling to risk the passage. You are, for now, free. Port Royal is a different beast entirely. Where Nassau was a chaotic party and Tortuga a paranoid fever dream, Port Royal is a city of brutal commerce. Great warships of the Royal Navy ride at anchor in the harbor, their cannons a promise of swift, state-sanctioned violence that makes pirate savagery seem almost quaint. Well-dressed merchants stride along the cobblestone quays, their faces pinched with the concerns of profit and loss, while sailors from 100 different ports brawl in the grog shops lining the waterfront. The air is still thick with rum and salt, but it's layered with the smells of money, molasses, spices, and the sweat of men working for wages instead of plunder. You part ways with the Sea Serpent and its terrified crew on a bustling dock, melting into the crowd without a backward glance. You are ghosts, possessing nothing but a blood-stained ledger and the clothes on your backs. Odette's shoulder is a throbbing agony, and William looks like a man who has seen the end of the world and is not sure he survived it. You find a room in a boarding house on a back street, a cramped, airless space that smells of mildew and boiled cabbage. It costs nearly everything you have left from the coins Odette had sewn into the lining of her trousers. The silence in that room is a physical presence. Odette, her face pale and beaded with sweat, tends to her wound with a stolen bottle of cheap brandy and a strip of linen. William sits on the edge of the cot, staring at his hands. They are calloused now, and in his mind, they are stained with more than just dirt. The music is gone. The man who made it is gone. He doesn't know who is left. The new life is built one painful brick at a time. The arrogance that served Odette so well in the lawless ports is a liability here. It must be reshaped. She finds work not in a tavern, but in a chop house that caters to ship's officers and clerks from the trading companies. It is loud and busy, but it operates on a different code. Here, her seriousness is mistaken for professionalism. Her sharp tongue is tempered into a brisk efficiency. She learns to smile, a thin, brittle thing that never reaches her eyes, and to nod at the tedious talk of cargo manifests and profit margins. She is playing a part, and you watch her build the costume piece by piece, a new mask for a new stage. Each night, she returns to the small room, the mask comes off, and the weary, hunted survivor reappears. For William, the transition is a different kind of torture. He is a man without a purpose. His hands, which once coaxed forth beauty, are now just hands. He finds work on the docks, heaving crates and barrels under the blazing Jamaican sun. The labor is punishing, mindless. The other men are coarse and loud, their jokes and shanties a world away from the intricate melodies he once knew. But there is a strange solace in the exhaustion. At the end of the day, his body aches too much for his mind to torment him. He is becoming someone else, someone harder, someone who does not flinch when a crate splinters, or when men curse in the heat. But sometimes, when his hands close around a rough wooden plank, he feels the shocking memory of his lute shattering against a man's skull, and he has to stop, his breath catching in his throat. You live in the quiet spaces between your labors. You share meals of stale bread and dried fish in the deepening twilight. The sounds of Port Royal's raucous nightlife a distant murmur. You rarely speak of Tortuga. You never speak of the bodies you left in the mud. The ledger lies wrapped in oilcloth and hidden beneath the loose floorboard, a sleeping dragon in your tiny sanctuary. A fragile peace settles over you, the quiet rhythm of work and sleep. It feels precarious, like walking on a thin sheet of ice, aware of the cold, dark depths just beneath. One evening, Odette works late. William returns from the docks, his body aching, and walks through the city alone. He keeps to the shadows, avoiding the boisterous crowds spilling from the taverns. He is passing a more refined establishment, a place with real glass in the windows, when a sound stops him cold. It is music, a harpsichord, playing a crisp, elegant sonata. The notes are clean, precise, and utterly devoid of the soul he poured into his lute. It is the music of the world he lost, the world of the family he can't protect, the world of the Sister Dubois held over him like a threat. He stands frozen in the street, a ghost listening to a party he can never attend, and the fragile peace of his new life shatters like glass. He is still standing there, lost in memory, when Odette finds him on her way back. She sees his face, sees the raw anguish there, and she knows. She doesn't offer words of comfort. She simply stands beside him, a silent, solid presence in the darkness. "It's just noise," she says finally, her voice low. Her gaze is not on the tavern, but on a poster freshly pasted to a nearby wall. It's an announcement from the harbor master's office. You move closer, your eyes drawn to the looping script. It's a list of newly arrived ships, their captains, and their ports of origin. Your gaze scans the names, and then it stops. A cold dread, familiar and sickening, washes over you. There, near the bottom of the list, are 3 words that steal the air from your lungs. The Chimera, Bristol, Captain J. Turner. The Phantom has not forgotten. He has not stopped hunting. He has simply sent a new player onto the board, a man who shares William's name. A man who is almost certainly his kin. Your new life was never a sanctuary, it was just a place to wait. And now you can feel the tide, cold and inexorable, beginning to rise around your ankles. The walk back to the boarding house is a silent funeral march for the peace you thought you had found. Every sound of the city, a raucous laugh from a tavern, the distant clang of a ship's bell, the creak of a hanging sign, feels like a nail being hammered into a coffin. The name on that poster, J. Turner, hangs in the air between you and William, a ghost that has followed you across the ocean. You feel his terror like a cold draft at your side. It's a shivering, palpable thing. Your own fear is different. It is a cold, hard knot in your gut, a familiar weight you have carried for years. The only difference is that now, it is a shared burden. Your tiny room feels smaller than ever before, the walls closing in, the air thick and hard to breathe. You light a single candle, its flame a weak, trembling speck in the oppressive gloom. The shadows it casts are long and distorted, turning the cramped space into a landscape of monsters. You move to the small, cracked basin, dipping a rag into the tepid water to clean the grime of the chop house from your hands. Your movements are stiff, your wounded shoulder a constant, searing reminder of the price of escape. William doesn't move. He stands in the middle of the room, a statue carved from dread, his gaze fixed on nothing. Then, slowly, as if they are alien things he has never seen before, he lifts his hands into the flickering candlelight. You stop washing, watching him, He turns them over and over, studying the palms, the knuckles, the calluses forming from his work on the docks. These are not the same hands that once danced over the strings of a lute. "He killed him," William whispers, his voice a dry rustle of dead leaves. You realize with a jolt he is not talking about the Phantom or Jean-Luc. He's talking about himself, the musician. "I killed him in that alley." He looks at you then, his eyes wide and hollowed out, dark pools of self-loathing. The man who played the lute, he wouldn't have been able to do that, to swing it like a club. 2. His voice breaks, and he can't finish the sentence. The sickening crack of splintering wood and bone echoes in the silence of the room, a sound only you two can hear. "That man would be dead," you say, your voice flat. You wring out the rag, the motion sharp and final. "He would have died on a sandbar off Sofala, or in a gutter in Nassau, or in that filthy alley in Tortuga. That man was a victim. You are not." He flinches as if you had struck him. "What am I then?" he chokes out. A bitter, desperate challenge. "A killer? Like them?" Quote. You turn from the basin, your whole body aching. You lean back against the wall, the cool, damp plaster a small comfort against your feverish skin. The arrogance is gone. The carefully constructed mask of the efficient chop-house wench has crumbled to dust. All that is left is the stark, unvarnished truth. "Yes," you say, and the word is not an accusation, but a simple, terrible statement of fact. "Like me." You see the confession land on him, a physical blow. He stumbles back and sinks onto the edge of the cot, his head in his hands. You let the silence stretch, giving the truth room to breathe, to settle in the dust motes, dancing in the candlelight. You've killed before Jean-Luc. Scraps and fights in back alleys over less than a silver candlestick. Self-defense, you always told yourself. Survival. But the guard in Tortuga, the quick, practiced way your knife found its home, that was something else. It was an answer to a threat, yes, but it was also a choice. A decision to meet brutality with superior brutality. You saw the same terrible decision in William's eyes in that final moment. He chose to live, and the price was a piece of his soul. It's a price you know all too well. "My hands," you say quietly, looking down at your own. They know how to pour ale and how to count coin. They know how to tie a sailor's knot and how to stitch a wound. They also know the weight of a knife. They know where to press it so a man stops struggling. You meet his gaze across the small room. "A skill is a skill, William. You learn them to survive. You just learned a new one. A terrible one, but it kept us alive." He looks up, his face streaked with tears you hadn't seen him shed. "But the music, it's gone, Odette. When I try to remember a melody, all I hear is him screaming. All I feel is—" He clenches his fists, his knuckles white. "I am not just a killer. I am a monster who destroyed the only beautiful thing he ever made." You push yourself off the wall, every movement an effort. You cross the few feet between you and kneel before him. It is an unfamiliar posture for you, this position of supplication, of comfort. You don't touch him. You just look at him, forcing him to see you. "No," you say, your voice firm, cutting through his haze of despair. "The Phantom is a monster. He uses people, breaks them, and discards the pieces. Jean-Luc was a monster. He traded in human misery for profit. They enjoy the power. They thrive on the pain." You gesture around the squalid little room, at the worn clothes and the constant fear. "Does this look like thriving to you?" He shakes his head, a helpless, jerky motion. "What you did in that alley was not an act of hate. It was an act of something else. You search for the word. You are not a woman of sentiment. But you saw his face when he lunged. It was not the face of a cold-blooded killer. It was the face of a man protecting the only thing he had left. You did it for me," you whisper, and the admission costs you more than you could have imagined. It makes you vulnerable. It ties you to him in a way that shared fear and violence never could. His breath hitches. He finally, truly looks at you, seeing past the arrogant wench and the efficient survivor. He sees the wound in your shoulder, the exhaustion etched around your eyes, the tremor of pain you try so hard to hide. "He would have killed you," William says, his voice thick with a dawning understanding. "And you would be in chains or dead. His pet musician once more," you reply. "We are what we have become, William. A killer and a woman who is very good with a knife. We can let that destroy us, or we can use it." Quote. You rise and walk to the loose floorboard. You pry it up and pull out the oilcloth-wrapped ledger. You place it on the small, wobbly table between you. Its weight, a heavy, definitive thud in the quiet room. You unwrap it. The book falls open to the last page, to the entry that has haunted your steps across the sea. The Chimera. Bristol. J. Turner. Your past has found you, you say, your voice regaining its familiar hard edge. And mine is tied to it. This man your brother? Cousin? My brother, William confirms, his voice barely audible. Jonathan. He's a captain, an honest one. There are no honest men in the Phantom's ledger, you state grimly. He is either a prisoner, a debtor, or a target. Whatever he is, the Phantom is using him to draw you out, to get this book back. William stares at his brother's name, and you see the anguish in his face transform. The self-loathing recedes, replaced by a slow-burning fire. It is the same fire you saw in his eyes in the alley. It is the fire of a man who has something to protect. I have to see him, he says, his voice gaining strength. I have to warn him. No, you say, placing your hand flat on the ledger, claiming it. We have to. You go to that ship alone. You are a fly walking into a spider's web. But we are not flies, not anymore. You tap the page. We have this. We have his secrets. We know how he operates. We are no longer the ones being hunted. He looks from the book to your face. He sees the pain there, but he also sees the unyielding resolve. You are two broken pieces of a shattered world. But here, in this room, you fit together. Your sharp, violent edges protect his fragile, rediscovered strength. His sudden, desperate courage shores up your weary cynicism. He reaches out and places his hand over yours on the ledger. His hand is rough from the docks, yours is deft and scarred. Underneath your palms, the names and numbers feel like a testament, a history of your shared damnation and your only path to redemption. The weight of the past is still there, it will always be there, but for the first time it does not feel like an anchor dragging you to the bottom of the sea. It feels like a weapon, a heavy, brutal, and exquisitely sharp weapon that you are finally learning to wield together. The weight of his hand over yours is a strange and unfamiliar thing. It is not the desperate grab of a man being saved, nor the clammy touch of a co-conspirator. It is simply there, a pressure that is both a burden and a brace. In the flickering candlelight, the ledger beneath your palms feels less like a book of secrets, and more like a tombstone you have both agreed to carry. This is the new reality, forged in the mud of a Tortugan alley. You are no longer two survivors running from a shared past, but partners bound to a shared future. The air in the room is still thick with the ghosts of who you were, the arrogant tavern wench, the shy musician, but their whispers are fainter now, drowned out by the steady, terrifying beat of a shared purpose. You are the first to pull your hand away, the contact suddenly too intimate, too raw. You need the familiar coldness of solitude, a shield against this new vulnerability. But the warmth of his touch lingers on your skin, a phantom sensation that you can't simply wipe away like grime. You rise stiffly, your shoulder sending a sharp, reprimanding bolt of pain through your body. The pain is good. It is a known quantity, a familiar anchor in a world that has been upended. The docks will be stirring before sunrise, you say, your voice a rough rasp. We need a plan, quote. William nods, his eyes still fixed on his brother's name as if he could burn it off the page with his gaze alone. The hollowed-out despair is gone, replaced by a banked fire you are beginning to recognize. It's the same quiet intensity he had when he spoke of his sister, the same protective fury that shattered his lute and ended a man's life. I can go, he says, his voice steadier than you've ever heard it. I work there. I can listen. No one notices another man hauling a crate. You consider this. Your first instinct is to refuse, to keep him close, to control every variable. The William you knew a week ago would have been a liability, his fear a beacon for any predator sniffing for weakness. But the man sitting before you is different. The mindless labor on the docks has chiseled away his fragility, leaving something leaner, harder. He is right. In Port Royal, your sharp eyes and coiled posture draw attention. You look like you are expecting a fight. He, on the other hand, has perfected the art of being overlooked. It was once his curse. Now, it is a tool. Fine, you concede, the word clipped. You listen. I'll watch. You cross to the grimy window, peering through a crack in the shutters at the sleeping city. I'll find a vantage point. A rooftop, a tavern loft overlooking the quay where the Chimera is moored. I want to see every man who comes and goes. I want to know their routines, their habits. The Phantom's men will have a tell. They always do. They walk like they own the place, even when they're trying to hide. Quote, he says nothing, but you feel his agreement. There is a new economy to your interactions, a shorthand born of shared violence. The next morning you move like separate parts of a single machine. You share a piece of hard bread in near silence, the plan from the night before hanging unspoken between you. As he prepares to leave, you watch him pull on his worn shirt, his movements deliberate. You notice the way he stands, his shoulders no longer hunched in a permanent cringe. He catches you watching, and for a moment, the old, shy William flickers in his eyes. Be careful, he says, the words soft but firm. It is not a plea, but a statement of mutual concern. Don't get noticed, you reply, which is your own version of the same sentiment. He is gone, melting into the gray pre-dawn light, and the room feels unnervingly empty. You are used to solitude, you have thrived in it, but this is different. It is a silence that feels incomplete. You shake the feeling away, irritated by its weakness, and set about your own task. Finding a vantage point is easy enough. The chop house where you work has a second-story storage room filled with sacks of flour and barrels of salted fish. Its window, thick with dust, offers a perfect, unobstructed view of the section of the harbor where the tall masts of the Chimera rise against the sky. You spend the day there, a ghost, amidst the smells of brine and grain, your eyes tracing the patterns of life on the ship below. You watch sailors mending nets, officers shouting orders, merchants haggling on the quay. It all looks perfectly normal. Too normal. That evening, you return to the boarding house to find William already there. He is sitting on the cot, cleaning the dock filth from under his fingernails with the point of a small knife. The sight is so mundane, so strangely domestic, it catches you off guard. He looks up as you enter, and you see no news in his face, only a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. You unwrap the crude bandage on your shoulder. The wound is inflamed, the edge is an angry red. It needs to be cleaned and redressed. A task that is nearly impossible with one good arm. You struggle with a knot, your frustration mounting with each failed attempt, the pain flaring with every movement. Here. His voice is quiet, but it's a command, not an offer. He is beside you before you can refuse, taking the strip of linen from your clumsy fingers. His touch is surprisingly steady as he unwinds the soiled bandage. You flinch when his fingers graze the hot, tender skin, your body tensing for a fight that isn't coming. Hold still, he murmurs, his focus entirely on the wound. He cleans it with the last of the brandy, his movements economical and precise. It stings like fire, and a sharp gasp escapes your lips, a sound of weakness you despise. But he doesn't comment, he just continues his work, his brow furrowed in concentration. Where did you learn to do that? You ask, your voice tight, needing to fill the unnerving silence. My father was a physician before he lost his practice, he says, his voice distant, as if retrieving a memory from a great depth. He believed knowledge should be practical. I learned to set a bone before I could properly tune a lute. He pauses, his hands stilling for a moment. Oren knew some things too, from his time at sea. He said the sea always takes its payment in flesh. The mention of Oren's name is a bridge back to a life that feels 100 years old. You remember the cold stone of the lighthouse, the rhythmic sweep of the beam, the grim certainty in his eyes. He too was a survivor marked by the Phantom's cruelty. He told me about Sofala, you say, the words in admission, a crack in your armor. About the musician, William finishes tying the new bandage, the knot clean and tight. He doesn't look at you. That musician, he thought beauty was a shield. He thought if he could just create something perfect enough, the ugliness of the world couldn't touch him. He finally raises his eyes to yours, and they are filled with a profound, weary sadness. He was wrong. There is no shield. There is only what you are willing to do to keep breathing. Quote, in his words, you hear the echo of your own life, a philosophy you have lived by without ever giving it a name. You have always seen his softness as a weakness, a dangerous liability. But now you see it for what it was, a different kind of armor, one that, like all armor, had finally been broken. And you understand that the hard shell you wear is just as brittle. He lost his music. You have spent a lifetime ensuring you had nothing so precious to lose. The next 2 days fall into the same rhythm. You watch, he listens. You see nothing but the mundane clockwork of a merchant ship. He hears nothing but idle dockside chatter. The tension mounts with each passing hour. The phantom is not a man to wait. The trap is here, somewhere, hidden in plain sight. On the 3rd night, he returns late, long after the sun has set. You are sitting in the dark, watching the candle burn low when the door opens. He doesn't have to say a word. You see it in his eyes. "They loaded cargo today," he says, his voice low and urgent. "Spices, bolts of silk." But it was a performance. The crates were too light. The men guarding them weren't sailors. They had the look of hired muscle. He pauses, taking a breath. "And then I saw him, a man leaving the captain's cabin after dark. He didn't belong. His clothes were too fine. His hands were soft. He moved like he was afraid of getting dirty. 'The phantom's bookkeeper,' you breathe, his eyes on the prize. More than that," William says, and he takes another step into the room, his shadow looming large on the wall. "I followed him. He went to a tavern near the naval yard, the Gilded Cage. He met with 2 men, Royal Navy officers." The pieces click into place with a sickening finality. The trap isn't on the ship. The ship is just the bait. "It's a frame," you say, your mind racing. "They're not here to take the book. They're here to have us arrested. Piracy. Murder. With testimony from naval officers, we'd hang before the week was out. The ledger would be confiscated as evidence, and the phantom's agent in the governor's office would make sure it disappears forever." Quote, "It is a plan of elegant, vicious simplicity, and you walked right into it. But in the midst of your cold dread, you feel a spark of something else, pride." William did this. He didn't just hear rumors. He observed. He followed. He understood. He used the very traits you once saw as weaknesses, his quietness, his invisibility, as a weapon. You look at him, standing in the flickering candlelight, his face grim with the knowledge he's brought. He is no longer the man you rescued, the asset you protected. He is your equal. The bond forged in the desperation of that alley has been tempered in the quiet labor of these last few days, shaped by a new, profound understanding. You understand his strength, and he has seen yours. You both know the cost of survival, the pieces of yourselves you have had to burn to keep the fire going. You nod. A slow, deliberate gesture of acknowledgement, of respect. You trust his information implicitly. You trust his instincts. He doesn't know that we know, you say. The gears of a new plan already turning in your mind. He thinks we're still the frightened rabbits he flushed in Tortuga. He thinks he's the hunter. A cold, grim smile touches your lips. A feral expression that feels more honest than any you've worn in weeks. Let's show him what it feels like to be the prey. The plan you forged in that desperate candlelit room was not a simple one. It was a web of interlocking lies, truths, and betrayals, as intricate and deadly as one woven by the phantom himself. You did not run. You did not hide. You took the weapon he had unknowingly given you, the ledger, and you turned it against his entire network. You used William's knowledge and your own ruthless pragmatism to become the whisper in the dark, the unseen hand that set his pawns against each other. You traded one secret for a captain's loyalty, another for a merchant's greed. You played the Royal Navy against the Phantom's agents, feeding their ambition with just enough truth to make your lies irresistible. The Chimera never sailed with its false cargo. Instead, its captain found himself in irons, betrayed by the very officers he'd bribed, his ship seized as an asset of the crown. The Phantom's intricate web, built over years of fear and manipulation, unraveled in a matter of weeks, its architect 1,000 miles away, watching his empire crumble into rumor and dust. The price was everything you had. But the reward was a small purse of the Phantom's own gold, liberated from a corrupt harbor master, and something far more valuable, a clean slate. A horizon empty of pursuing sails, and now you stand on a shore that does not stink of rum and despair. The sun rises, not over a forest of masts and the squalor of a pirate den, but over a placid turquoise cove. The light is soft and golden, chasing the last purple shadows from the hills behind you. The air is clean. It smells of damp earth, of night-blooming jasmine, and the clean, sharp scent of salt from a sea at peace. The only sounds are the gentle, rhythmic sigh of waves lapping against a crescent of white sand and the cry of a lone gull wheeling in the impossibly blue sky. For the first time in as long as you can remember, the tension in your shoulders is gone. You can breathe, a full, deep breath that does not catch in your throat with fear. This is the quiet you have paid for. You turn from the water and look at the life you have begun to build. It is not a fortress or a hideout. It is a home. A small, simple cabin, built from timber you helped fell and drag from the surrounding woods, sits nestled in a grove of sea grape trees. Its lines are not perfect, the roof still needs patching in one corner, but it is sturdy. It is yours. A curl of smoke rises from its fieldstone chimney, a signal to no one but yourselves. Beside the cabin, a small patch of earth has been cleared and tilled, neat rows of green shoots just beginning to push their way through the dark soil. It is a landscape of painstaking, deliberate creation, the very opposite of the life of reactive, chaotic survival you have always known. William is near the water's edge, his back to you. He is not staring at the horizon with dread, but mending a fishing net, his hands moving with a slow, focused grace. The brutal work on the docks has thickened his frame, his shoulders broader, his skin tanned by the sun. He is no longer the pale, haunted figure you dragged from a tavern in Nassau. You watch his fingers, strong and calloused now, as they deftly tie a knot, testing its strength before moving to the next break in the mesh. He is not making music, but there is a rhythm to his work, a quiet harmony in the practiced, patient movements. He seems to feel your gaze and turns, a small, genuine smile touching his lips. It is a sight that is still new enough to be startling, a warmth that you are still learning not to flinch from. He gestures with his head toward the cabin, and you nod. He sets the net aside and walks toward you, his steps sure on the soft sand. He doesn't speak as he passes you, but his arm brushes yours, a fleeting, casual contact that is more eloquent than any words. It speaks of familiarity, of comfort, of 1,000 silent mornings just like this one. You follow him inside. The cabin is one room, Spartan but clean. A simple table and 2 chairs, a cot in the corner, a small stove. The ledger is not here. Its secrets, having served their purpose, were given to the sea, its pages dissolving in the deep, its power extinguished forever. On the table sits a half-carved block of driftwood. You pick it up. It's the shape of a seabird, its wings just beginning to emerge from the wood. The cuts are clean, confident. William's hands have not forgotten how to create beauty, but they are no longer trying to build a shield with it. This is not art, born of desperation, but of peace. He hands you a cup of water, cool and fresh from the small spring in the hills. As you drink, your gaze falls upon your own hands. The scars are still there, pale lines crisscrossing your knuckles, a map of brawls and bargains won and lost. You touch the thicker, angrier scar on your shoulder, a permanent reminder of the price of his life, and yours. It no longer burns with a memory of pain, but aches with a dull, distant memory, like a story that happened to someone else. You are not the woman who earned those scars, not entirely. Her seriousness has softened into resolve. Her arrogance has been honed into a quiet self-assurance. She learned that survival wasn't just about protecting herself, but about finding something, someone, worth protecting. You look at William, who is now staring at his own hands, much as he did in that dark, desperate room in Port Royal. But he is not seeing a killer's hands. He is seeing the hands of a man who can mend a net, till the soil, and coax the shape of a bird from a piece of wood. The ghost of the musician has not been exorcised, but has found its peace. Sometimes, when he thinks no one is listening, you hear him hum. The melodies are not the sad, intricate laments of his past. They are simple, foundational things, like the first few notes of a song yet to be written. Orang would have liked it here, he says quietly, his voice filling the comfortable silence. He would have found fault with the angle of the roof, you reply, a hint of your old sharpness in your tone, but there is no bite to it. It's a shared memory, a private joke. And he would have said the sea is too calm. It makes a man careless. Maybe he would have learned to be a little careless, William says, and his smile returns, broader this time. You both know this peace is not a guarantee. The world beyond this cove is still filled with men like the Phantom, with hungry empires and the casual cruelty of survival. The future is a vast, uncharted ocean, but the fear is gone. It has been replaced by a quiet readiness. You have faced the worst of the world and the worst of yourselves, and you have not only endured, but you have built something from the wreckage. You have taken the broken pieces of your lives and fashioned them into a shelter. Later, as the afternoon sun slants across the cove, you walk with him to the water's edge. You stand side by side, watching the tide roll in, the waves erasing your footprints from the sand. The sea that was once a path to escape, a terrifying wilderness, a witness to betrayal, is now just the sea. Its power is immense, its beauty undeniable, but it is no longer your enemy or your accomplice. It is simply the horizon. You look out at that endless line where the water meets the sky, and you feel not the terror of the unknown, but the quiet, thrilling whisper of possibility. Your journey is not over. It has just begun, and you will face it, whatever it may bring, together.